Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of my podcast and the third episode in my little mini series, Wellness for Beginners. Last podcast episode, I talked about wellness in the body, and this episode, I wanted to talk about wellness in the mind. The very first episode in this mini series, I talked about wellness and stripping it back, taking it back to basics, and why wellness is important, what it is for different people. And I talked about kind of your 3 pillars of wellness in a person. So you've got the body, the mind, and the spirit. It's more of the holistic approach. But those are the 3 kind of things. And then the last podcast focused on the body, why exercising, diet, water, and sleep are so important and why they're so good for you. And then this episode, I am going to be talking a little bit about the mind side. So, just some tips and tricks to kind of, and things that can help with the mind. I'm going to go in to begin with and say I am not a counselor and I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm not a doctor. So if there is something serious going on, anything mentally where you feel like you need to talk to somebody, this is not the place for that. And if you are someone who needs to seek professional medical advice, then go for it and do it. This is more of kind of some ideas to help improve mental health. But if you're suffering and you really need to speak to somebody, this is not a place of medical advice. This is just a place of some tips and tricks. So, yeah, let's go in with it. Let's get started, and I will see you on the other side. Hi, my name is Meg, and you are listening to the Wellness Musings with Meg podcast. I am a fully qualified beautician and yoga teacher who has studied and worked in health and wellness since 2017. I have been obsessed with wellness my entire life and have always wanted to share my passions more. If you love health, wellness, and yoga and want to learn more, this podcast is for you. I will be bringing you all things wellness, from diet and lifestyle to beauty tips and tricks, and of course, yoga as well. So grab yourself a green tea and find a tranquil spot, and let's jump in. Mental health is such a talked about subject at the moment. It kind of has really come into its own lately. I feel like everywhere I look on social media, people are talking about mental health, which is fantastic. The accessibility is there so much more than it used to be. I think finding the right counsellor for you is another story, and also finding what works for you is another story. Um, when I was younger, I did really briefly talk about it on the last podcast episode, but when I was younger, suffered with anorexia, about 13, 14 years old. I was really poorly. I had to be taken out of school for a year and I did almost die. So yeah, and the counselling I had for that was absolutely incredible. Within a year, I was better and I have never relapsed, which is amazing. I'm very lucky for that. And it doesn't plague me so much in an anorexic form anymore. I think I definitely do suffer with mental health. I think everybody does on some level. I think it's very, very rare that someone isn't suffering. And I think that's one thing we've all got to be aware of all the time, is that you never know what's going on with a person, and what might seem like nothing for you could be the end of the world to somebody else. And that's okay. We all take things in a different way. We all experience pain differently, and we all experience mental health differently. But here on this episode, just want to talk about a few little tips and tricks and things that you can do to help a little bit with mental health and or keeping on top of mental health. These are all things I try as best as I can to get into practice. I love all of these things, to be honest, and they are really lovely little exercises that you can do to kind of incorporate into your life. The first one is reading and learning. They are 2 separate things in that I think reading isn't always learning, but then also it is always learning. I'm not a massive reader. I definitely am someone who prefers non-fiction. Non-fiction's the not fantasy. Yeah, I get really confused. I'm very dyslexic, and I've got dyspraxia as well. So reading for me is quite a challenge. So when it's like a fantasy book, it just I can't make sense of it. But factual novels or like different textbooks and things like that, I love it, which is really strange. Most people are the complete opposite. But reading and learning is so, so good for your brain. Every time you learn something new, it encourages the growth of new brain cells and new connections as well. So, learning is really important. Learning will help your brain to kind of function a little bit more. It takes your mind off of things as well. If things aren't necessarily brilliant in your life, you can escape from it through reading and through learning, which is kind of a gift, really. If you've got something that you're really interested in, I mean, think about it right now. There might be something that you learn. Maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's in school, and you look forward to it and you can't wait to learn about it, whether it's music or whether it's mathematics, or it could be dancing. Anything that you're learning is going to be so beneficial for you, and it's beneficial for your brain. Reading is the same. Regardless of what you're reading, you're still taking that in, you're still learning from that. um, so yeah, whether you're learning creative writing through reading or whether you're just learning facts through reading. Following on from reading, I think journaling and writing is also very good. When I looked up some different ways to help with mental health, a lot of it spoke more about journaling. And journaling is really, really good because it helps to bring those thoughts and feelings and emotions that you have onto paper. But I also think creative writing and just writing in general is also really beneficial too for mental health, because it kind of coincides with that learning part. It works on creativity. Creating in general is really good for your brain. So whether that is listening or playing music, um, or creating art, anything like that, you are still really benefiting your brain, and letting that creative side flow and come out, I think, is so, so important for people because it gives them some chance to express who they really are. We do live in a world where people feel like they have to conform to a very specific box. As time's going on, I feel like that is changing, but we still do live in a world where you have your right and you have your wrong, or I say right and wrong in air quotes. And I think creativity is a really good way to express and to be come away from that normality and into what makes you you. We're all different. We're all different people. We all have something different to bring. And I think creativity is one of the best ways that you can do that. And it helps you and it helps your brain to kind of express who you truly are. So whether journaling, as in taking your feelings, your thoughts, and putting them onto pen and paper, or I've added in creative writing, because I think either way, you're creating or you're taking those thoughts and feelings and emotions and putting them onto pen and paper. And sometimes I will even journal, but journal through gratitude. So gratitude is supposedly one of the best things that you can do for your mental health. I'm a big, big fan of the Happiness Lab podcast. And if you're someone who's interested in mental health and looking into creating happiness, the Happiness Lab is fantastic. Dr. Laurie Santos, who is the speaker on the podcast, she's incredible. She looked at the university that she's in and she realized that all these students were under so much pressure. And so she created a free course to teach students how to become happier and looking at the science in happiness, because the science of happiness is very different to what you would expect often. Um, so people will, for example, think that earning lots of money will make them happy, when science is actually showing that the opposite is true in a lot of cases, if not all cases. I hear all the time of people who say that the most depressed people they ever meet are the richest people. And I think that speaks volumes. But gratitude, in when on the Happiness Lab, they talk about gratitude all the time and how important gratitude is. So I think that's something that's worth practicing all the time. It's something that I definitely every single day try to make time for. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to even do it in a very purposeful way. Sometimes I'll just walk around during my day and just be like, oh, I'm thankful for this, I'm thankful for that, I'm thankful for my house, I'm thankful for my bed, I'm thankful for this food, I'm thankful for my dog, I'm thankful for the sun, I'm thankful for my life, my family. Like, the list can literally be endless. Sometimes I'll lay in bed and I'll sit and I'll just sort of have a moment and think about all the things that I'm grateful and thankful for that have happened during the day. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, if I've got time, maybe I'll write it down, maybe I'll just think of things. But I think gratitude is definitely one of the best. And from all the studies that have been done, gratitude is the thing to do to really help with like improving mental health. And that is something that I think everybody should be practicing. I think if everybody did practice gratitude, the world would be a better place. The world can be so negative sometimes and damn right depressing, to be honest. It really can be. I mean, there are horrendous things going on in the world, but taking that moment to be grateful and thankful for the things that you have, even if you're going through a really hard time, just take the tiniest little thing. I mean, I went to school with a girl who, at 17, she lost her life due to cancer. And she didn't pass in a particularly comfortable way. Um, and it was a really horrible time for her and the family. But I, every day, because of that, it affected me so much. And I'll think of things like, I'll walk down the street, and even though I don't like the cold, I don't like the wind, and I don't like the rain, I'll walk along and I'll go, I can feel the wind, I can feel the rain, I can feel it. And I'm so grateful that I am here right now feeling the wind and the rain and the cold, because that girl would do anything to experience that. And I think those are things we need to think about, putting things into perspective, that even if things seem really, really, really awful, and I'm not saying that people who might be listening to this aren't going through horrendous things, but for your own sanity, thinking of tiny things to be grateful for, and just thinking of those things and being grateful for the things that you do have, I think it just helps so much to make a bad situation that little bit better. Um, and from gratitude, you then have mindfulness, which is definitely something you have to practice. It doesn't always come naturally, but it's about being in the moment and just giving your brain a moment to really notice what's going on around you. How many noises can you hear? What can you smell? What colors can you see? What temperature is your body? What's your breath like? What's your heartbeat like? Like, you're taking everything into that 1 second. What can you feel? Maybe you're washing up. There's an exercise that they tell you to do when you learn mindfulness, where they get you to wash up, and they get you to notice the smells, the sounds, the feeling, the temperature. Eating mindfully is another one as well, where you'll have a raisin if you're unlucky, or a piece of chocolate if you are lucky, depending on what where you learn mindfulness. And they get you to really taste and smell and like take that moment in to really mindfully eat what you've got there in front of you. And it does really change the experience. It makes a huge difference. I think these little things are things that everyone can kind of put into their life. And like I said, for your own sanity, it's worth doing anything that creates those endorphins, those healthy endorphins. So exercising, getting outside into fresh air, gardening is a huge thing. I I won't lie, my favorite program is Gardener's World on BBC. I absolutely love it. And I love gardening myself. It takes me back to being a child when my parents used to. My mum is a very keen gardener, and so is my pops. And so it takes me back to being a child. But I think even if you're someone that hasn't really had much experience in a garden, being outside, placing your hands into dirt, into mud, it kind of has that childlike element to it. And then planting flowers, growing something, maybe it's a vegetable that you can then eat. There has been studies that show that if you place your bare feet or hands into grass and into the ground, it really helps to ground you. It changes, I think it's the magnetic field. I'm not sure. I need to do some more research into that before I say specifically, but there, I know I have read several things that show how important it is to have contact with the earth and with the ground. So these are all little things that are worth thinking about: knowledge, learning, gratitude, journaling, mindfulness, creating, and exercise, endorphins, getting yourself outside. These are all things that should help towards mental health and should help to just bring your brain back to reality, grounding yourself a little bit more. And just the aim is to make your brain go, ah. I think one last thing that I want to add in is to be kind to yourself and to sometimes take a step back into your life. Sometimes you don't realize what you're doing is the reason that your brain might not be in the best place. So sometimes if life is really crazy and really hectic, I have some clients that come to me and they come to me and they go, oh my gosh, I'm such a mess, I'm so sorry, I feel so awful, oh god, I look a state, I look terrible, and this is happening with my son, and then I spent all night, I've been up all night because I've had to do this, I've had to work on that, and then I've done this and I've done that. And then about 10 minutes later, once I'm doing their treatment, and they go, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't know. I'm just so rubbish. Like, why can I not do all these things? And I sit there and I go, look, you've just sat here for like 10 minutes and listed and reeled off how busy and crazy your life is currently right now. And that's okay. We all go through busy periods. But if you're going through a busy spell, don't be really hard on yourself when you don't achieve huge things, or if your brain, I mean, we all suffer with burnout, and your brain might well be saying to you, hey, I need a rest, I need a moment, let's just stop. So I think another thing is just being kind to yourself, listening to your body. It's a hard balance between pushing yourself to do something like reading or learning or doing exercise. They're quite a big, if you're really tired, they're quite a hard thing to get yourself to do. So it's quite hard to find the difference between not laziness, but I like not really feeling motivated to do those things, and then needing to not do anything to give your brain that chance to rest and relax. But then that's one of the things I love most about gratitude and mindfulness, is that it doesn't really matter how tired or how where your brain is, you can always think of something to be grateful for. We are that the likelihood of you being here is insane in itself. The fact that everything is the way that it is, if our world was slightly 1 degree off, we wouldn't exist. And when you think about conception, the billions of sperm that meet the egg, or and you are the one that was conceived, and you are the one that became a human being, and you are the one who was gifted life. That in itself is enough to be grateful for, to be here to witness it, to be able to feel even those negative emotions. You got to experience them, and they might not be pleasant and they might not be nice, but you got to experience them. And that is incredible. That in itself is just insane to me anyway. So that's my little episode for today. Like I said in the beginning, if you are really struggling mentally, seeking help from a professional is such a big and important thing to do. I've had therapy over my life. It's one of the, if not the best thing I ever did, especially when I was younger and I was very unwell. I was very grateful, and I am very grateful for the help and the counsellor that I had. I think it's amazing that we live in a world now. I mean, I think about when my grandparents were younger, and if they were struggling, there wasn't that support system and that understanding of what mental health is. We live in a world now where if things aren't okay, we have that ability, all those people, to be able to help you. So I think if you are struggling, even if you just talk to someone for a moment or one session just to see what it's like, just do it. Just if things are really hard, there's no shame in going for help. And you live with yourself for a really long time. I said this in my last episode actually, that you are the only person that has to be with you and your brain and your mind and your body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. From the moment you are born to the moment you die, you are the only person that has to spend all that time with you. So if things aren't okay and your brain is driving you insane and you're just really struggling, get help. Just go and see someone, because it's better to live happily than it is to live in misery. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it's given you some little tips and tricks to help with your mental health, or just even if it's just to boost you a little bit more. There's some little ideas. Sometimes they're useful to know if you're having a bad day. We all have bad days. Sometimes they're useful to know because then you think, oh, well, how can I make myself feel better? I could try this. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode, and please like and please subscribe, please follow. It means so much to me if you guys hit that subscribe button on YouTube, or hit the follow button if it's on Spotify, rating and reviewing as well. I feel like this podcast is very early days at the moment, but I'm massively enjoying spilling out all this information for you to endure. But yeah, rating, reviewing, liking, subscribing, it means so much to me. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Thanks. Bye.